So the area right behind us looks very, very barren and very, very desolate, but even down there, it's a sense of scale. We can't see up here the beauty that's going on down there. Right now, if you were to walk down there, it is an absolute field of purple. There's a little purple flowered plant called the lupin down there, and that's the big story right down there. And probably the best story I could tell you about is a friend of mine, one of the monument ecologists, Charlie Crisafulli, found the very first plant to colonize that area down there. It was a prairie lupin, a little tiny purple flowered plant. They suspect lupin had survived somewhere up on the higher flanks, northeast or northwest flank of the mountain, and the pod was washed down after a rainfall. This one plant got established. So Charlie set up a research plot around the one plant, and the neat thing about a lupin is you can keep track of them. A 1-year-old is so big, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, and they'll grow to about 4 to 5 years of age, and then they die. So he was able to keep track of them very easily. And that one plant acted like a seed catch. It caught other seeds blown in on the wind. Within about a 10-year time frame, Charlie had hand counted the life and death of over 169,000 individual plants that basically got started from that one individual. And there were 12 species of plants in this plot by 1989, but there were no other species growing. And it was pretty interesting because in the early 1990s, suddenly a lot of grasses began to grow in the research plot, and they couldn't figure out how they got there. It corresponded, these grasses appearing in the plot corresponded with the same time that a herd of elk, about 30 elk, began to live down here in the summertime, and they would leave little brown Christmas presents behind, elk poop. And Charlie began to collect elk poop. He would take it home and put it in a plastic bag and put it in a refrigerator to simulate it being buried under snow in the winter. He would take the elk poop out in the spring and he'd lay it on the ground and he would water it to simulate rainfall. And we got 15 species of plants to grow out of elk poop that he collected down there. And we went from 12 species to 27 species of plants growing in that single plot just due to the presence of elk being down there. That's a neat story, isn't
That's a
it?
great story.
What's going on? This is to me, one of the ecological hotspots in the area. This is also, geologically, this is a very interesting area because one of the ahas for geologists in 1980 is that volcanoes fall apart. We did not understand that volcanoes collapsed like this. And when we look up the valley and we see all these mounds, geologists took a look at the pictures of Mount St. Helens erupting and saw the landslide come down. They looked at what the deposit looked like and immediately had little geologic light bulbs flashing over their head. They knew they had seen the deposit somewhere before, and the place they had seen it was in Northern California off Mount Shasta. For 50 years, geologists had been debating what these funny little mounds were in around Weed, California. And within seconds, we knew exactly what they were. They were a landslide deposit which had come off Mount Shasta. Now, if you think of the size of the landslide I talked about here, we had enough earth to fit on a football field, built walls around it 600 miles high. The landslide that came off Mount Shasta was 18 times larger in volume than the landslide that came off Mount St. Helens. Now that we know what landslide deposits look like, it's extremely common. Volcanoes fall apart all around the world. They've identified over 200 landslide deposits worldwide. We just didn't know what they looked like.